You studied this. Competitive inhibitor, Km goes up, Vmax stays the same. You had it cold last night. Then the passage drops a graph in front of you. The clock is running and your hand hesitates. Was it Km that moved or Vmax? Enzyme kinetics is one of the most testable corners of MCAT biochemistry, and it punishes memorizing over understanding because the three inhibitor types are built to look almost identical. By the end of this video, you'll have a way to tell them apart that doesn't fall apart under pressure. Let's fix the thing you keep flipping.
Start with the picture. Put substrate concentration on the x-axis and reaction rate on the y-axis. And an enzyme traces a curve that climbs steeply, then bends, then flattens out. That flat ceiling is Vmax, the maximum rate the enzyme can reach when it is completely saturated with substrate. It flattens because every enzyme molecule is already working as fast as it can. Adding more substrate can't speed up a line that's already full. And Vmax isn't a property of the enzyme alone. It depends on how much enzyme you have and how fast each copy turns substrate into product.
Now the term people quietly dread Km, the Michaelis constant. Forget the derivation for a second and hold on to one definition. Km is the substrate concentration at which the enzyme runs at half of Vmax. That's it. Here's the part that trips everyone. A low Km means high affinity. Read that twice, because your instinct fights it. If it takes only a tiny amount of substrate to push the enzyme to half speed, the enzyme is grabbing substrate eagerly. That's high affinity. Big Km, low affinity. Small Km, high affinity. The number and the affinity move in opposite directions, and that single inversion is behind a huge share of the mistakes on this topic. One more setup piece, because the test loves showing this as a graph instead of words. The normal substrate versus rate curve is a hyperbola, that climbing then flattening shape. To make the numbers easier to read, biochemists often flip it into a straight line called a Lineweaver-Burk plot, where the intercepts hand you Vmax and Km directly. You don't need to love that plot. You need to recognize that when an inhibitor changes Km or Vmax, it visibly moves those intercepts. That's the whole reason inhibitor questions are so often graphs. The effect is something you can literally see. Inhibitor number 1, competitive. A competitive inhibitor looks like the substrate, so it slips into the active site and blocks it. But here's the key. This is a fight the substrate can win. Flood the enzyme with enough substrate and it outcompetes the inhibitor, and you still reach full speed. So Vmax is unchanged. You can still get there, you just need more substrate to do it. And because you need more substrate to reach half speed, the apparent Km goes up. Competitive is the one that touches Km. Say it that way. Competitive competes for the active site, and the thing that moves is Km. Inhibitor number 2, noncompetitive. This one binds somewhere else on the enzyme, not the active site, and changes the enzyme's shape, so it works worse no matter what. Now, more substrate can't rescue you, because the problem isn't competition for the active site. The problem is that a fraction of your enzyme is effectively switched off. So Vmax goes down, you can't reach full speed anymore. And Km? In pure non-competitive inhibition, Km stays the same, because the enzyme that's still working grabs substrate just as well as before. Non-competitive is the mirror image of competitive. It touches Vmax, not Km. Inhibitor number 3, uncompetitive. The one people forget exists until it shows up and wrecks them. An uncompetitive inhibitor only binds after the substrate is already in. It grabs the enzyme substrate complex, not the free enzyme. That does two things at once. It drops Vmax because it's pulling active complexes out of the game, and it actually lowers Km because by locking substrate into the complex, it pulls the reaction toward more binding, and that reads as higher affinity. So uncompetitive is the strange one where both Km and Vmax go down together. One honest footnote. So a passage can't blindside you. What I just called clean non-competitive, Vmax down, Km unchanged, is really the tidy textbook special case. In the fuller picture, it's a form of mixed inhibition, where the inhibitor binds both the free enzyme and the complex, and Km can shift in either direction depending on which one it prefers. For the MCAT, learn the clean three first. They carry most questions. But don't panic if a passage says mixed. It just means the inhibitor isn't playing favorites. Here's the move that keeps these straight when you're tired and the clock is loud. Don't memorize 6 separate facts. Memorize which knob each inhibitor turns. Competitive fights for the active site, so it turns the Km knob Km up, Vmax safe. Noncompetitive sabotages the enzyme itself, so it turns the Vmax knob, Vmax down, Km safe. Uncompetitive waits for the complex and jams the works, so it turns both knobs down together. Competitive, Km. Non-competitive, Vmax. Uncompetitive, both. 3 inhibitors, 3 knob patterns, far lighter to carry into the exam than a table of arrows. And when it's a graph instead of words, do this. Find where the lines meet the axis. If the inhibited enzyme still reaches the same ceiling, same Vmax, but needs more substrate to get there, that's competitive. If the ceiling drops but the substrate needed for half speed hasn't moved, that's non-competitive. If everything shifts together, uncompetitive. You're not re-deriving anything. You're matching the picture to one of 3 knob patterns you already know. That's the difference between recognizing the answer in 5 seconds and second-guessing yourself into the wrong one. So the thing you kept flipping, it was never that the facts were hard. It's that 3 lookalikes were fighting for the same slot in your memory with no system to tell them apart. Now you have one. Competitive touches Km. Non-competitive touches Vmax. Uncompetitive touches both. And low Km always means high affinity. The number and the affinity run opposite. Drill those as knob patterns, not arrows, and this stops being a topic you dread and turns into free points on test day. If this is the kind of breakdown that finally makes things stick, I put 100 of them into a free deck, 100 high-yield MCAT cards, 20 from every section in the same accuracy-checked style you just saw. It's free at the link in the description. Grab it, and if a card ever feels off, tell me. This whole thing gets built and rechecked in the open. New breakdowns go up regularly, so subscribing means the next one comes to you.
The honest part, I haven't taken the MCAT. I built this for my daughter's retake, straight from the AAMC's own published materials. Premed Comeback isn't affiliated with or endorsed by the AAMC. Free deck and full course, both linked below. See you in the next one.